Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the April 28th Berlin Board of Education meeting. We're going to call this meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. We're going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so this evening we have Becky. Where's Becky? Oh, right there. Tyrell, who is on the CABE Board of Directors. She has some awards to present to us, and she also serves on the Plainville Board of Education. I actually presented their awards last week, and now she's here presenting some really great awards for some awesome achievements that highlight all the things Berlin Public Schools does. So you can come on up if you want to. Oh, you have a microphone. Perfect.
I'm just gonna kind of, is this on? I'm just gonna kind of move down here a little bit. So yes, my name is Becky Tyrell, as Julia mentioned, and I am an associate director of CABE, and I'm here to recognize Berlin Public Schools and present you with a few heavy awards here. And this is what's known as the Bonnie B. Carney Award for Communication. CABE has been honoring districts with the Award for Excellence in Education Communication since 1975. In 2016, the award was renamed honoring longtime CABE staff member Bonnie B. Carney in recognition of her 47 years of dedicated service to education, focused on communications. And with this award, CABE's goal is to identify and honor the hardworking people in school districts for their continuing efforts to communicate effectively. So you have received 3 awards, and let me see. Oh yeah, so maybe somebody can hold them. The first one is a award for newsletter, the Board of Education Snapshot Fall 2024. Let's hope that was the right one.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. This is for the special project, and it's opioid awareness. And just lucky to have 3 of you lovely young ladies. Yeah, the Vannas of the group. For social media, this is Berlin Public Schools' YouTube channel. So, congratulations.
Can we get up with the board and take a picture?
She can tell you
So
where to
before we
place
take a picture, I think it's, thank you. I think it's great to highlight, there's 3 different awards that represent the board and the subcommittee work that the Community Engagement Committee has done. Nick Smith and his team, and then the opioid, who was at the high school?
There was Nick Smith,
Okay.
as well as Jamie Miller in the town.
Great, so if you
Police
want to say a
department.
few words.
Sure. I think years ago, just so the community knows that Nick Smith, who's in the back here, a lot of changes have gone on, and throughout COVID, even more changes. But the group that's behind us that broadcast all of the board meetings, we used to actually contract with Nutmeg TV, I believe, and now it's all done internally within the board. There's student workers that actually get paid for their work. Mr. Smith, who is our director, and then there's actually students who are part of the club, and they're doing all the broadcasting. So they're behind a lot of the work that was done here. The board snapshot is something that the board subcommittee looked at ways to communicate with the members of the community, and that comes out 3 times a year and it's a 2-page interactive that all of you see that's sent to you. So really credit to Nick and his group and to the board members on the subcommittee. But thank you very much, Kate, for presenting us the awards. Really appreciate it.
So if the board wants to get up, and then we can get a picture with Becky, and Nick will come in too, and we'll hold the awards and get some pictures. If we just stand in front of the table, that will be fine. It's okay. We can like stagger ourselves. It's cool.
Go ahead, you first. Thanks for not answering your phone.
It's on silent.
Do you want us to go up from the table?
Yeah, go in front of the table. Meeting started.
Sean thinks he tore his bicep.
Yeah. I just randomly found these. I got excited. Yeah, they keep dressed. It's really pretty.
Except it keeps getting caught in the heels.
I know I have one like that, and I trip on it actually. Okay, so congratulations for the awards. And we're going to move on to student presentation. I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Yes, very happy to have Principal Sullivan here, Assistant Principal Devin Constance, and Assistant Principal Abby Frobe, and members of the McGee 6th grade ELA team, and some students here. So, Mr. Sullivan, I'm going to turn it over to you to come to the microphone.
Congratulations to the board. And the celebrations are going to continue because what tonight is really all about is celebrating what happens when you foster collaboration. So collaboration happens on many different levels, and it actually starts with the output of this project at the board level and the district committee, which supported the goal-setting process, which you'll hear some of our ELA team explain. From there, we have Gravity Goldberg, who is a consultant we worked with, collaborating with our team and our 612 supervisor for creating and implementing a new unit of study. And then obviously, and most importantly, the collaboration among our students, among their staff, and among all of our support at McGee Middle School, which you're going to partner in some of the reading and celebrate some of the work that our students have been a part of over the course of the year. So to kick off and introduce some of the members that have joined us tonight, we have Lori Peiswitz, who is our 612 supervisor.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us as our 6th grade ELA teachers and some very promising young authors highlight a new narrative fiction unit where students wrote their own children's books on social issues in the world today. I'm Lori Pisewicz, 612 ELA Department Supervisor, and I could not be more excited to share the work of our fantastic 6th grade team and their equally amazing students tonight. Before I turn it over to the people you'd really like to hear from, I'd like to start by sharing the professional goal that the 6th grade team set for themselves. Okay. After a year of work and curricular revision, this team has come to two very important conclusions. One, we don't teach books, we teach skills. And two, before teaching skills and beyond all else, we teach children. Embracing this philosophy has allowed teachers to provide choice and voice for our students with a strong emphasis on supporting student learning and advancing literacy outcomes as directly related to the team's goals. I would like to publicly thank each teacher for committing themselves to a professional learning community grounded in advancing student progress and teaching to the whole child. Although Mrs. Prentice is not able to join us this evening, I'm very excited to introduce Mrs. Burnham, Mrs. McCorkle, Mrs. Tarver, and our amazing student authors as they share their process, their new learning, and even the application of transferable skills with you all. I'm sure you'll agree that there is much to be excited about in 6th grade ELA.
Alrighty, good evening everyone. My name is Megan Tarver. One thing we did as a team this year with ELA is we took on a huge challenge, rewriting 4 of our units of study. So we began this year with our grammar boot camp, really building those foundational skills that we can spiral back to and review throughout the course of the school year. Then we rewrote our narrative writing unit, and lastly, our informational reading and writing units. But tonight we're here to really highlight our narrative writing unit, where the students had a really fun opportunity to create their own social issues picture books, where they really built upon all of the skills and concepts that we tackled in our narrative reading unit. So let's talk about how we were able to make that happen.
Okay, so when we started this unit, there's so much thought and design that goes into a unit. We know we need to follow the CCC, Common Core State Standards, and we wanted to make this valuable for and engaging for our students. So how did we do this? We did this in several different ways. One was to ensure that there were transferable skills. We wanted to make sure that what they were learning, like Mrs. Paseo had said, what they were learning wasn't just the piece of writing, but they were learning skills that they're able to take other places. A couple examples are like organization and structure. They made plot mountains by themselves. You can take that organization and structure and put that into a science lab that you're designing. You can put that into math. You can put that into many different places, a transferable skill. Likewise, sequencing and ideas. The kids talked about descriptive language and word choice. Where else could that be beneficial to them? Character development and perspective, revising and editing, which is a lifelong skill in any area that you're in. Creative thinking. So this also gave our students that thrive in other areas a way to showcase that. Voice and audience awareness. Hopefully you'll be able to tell that tonight, and all of the different transferable skills.
So how did we do that? We wanted to make sure that we made this as engaging as possible for all of the students. And so some of the ways that we did that is we gave them a lot of student choice, and they got to choose their social issue, which we brainstormed like what was appropriate for elementary students, because it was a book for elementary students. We modeled a lot of books for them. We gave them choice on what their characters would be. They could be people, they could be shapes, they could be pieces of paper, which was some of them. They could choose their setting, the conflict, and any scenes that they wanted to. The student voice came through when they really brought themselves into the story, so they used whatever vocabulary they wanted to use. They used their experiences from in their past, their writing that they enjoyed in past years, into their story. And we did a lot of collaboration between the four of us, and we also did it with other departments in our building. So we had the library and the technology department come in, and Mrs. Turgeon and Ms. Reinholds, they came in and taught all of our students and us how to use a new application called Canva, and that's how we illustrated them all. So when you see them tonight, you'll really be able to see how their words came alive with that. And so I think you're going to see tonight that the kids are very excited, they're very proud, and we were just really excited about the unit by the time we were done with it all. So, all right, so we're going to call up our, oh, one more? Sorry. There you go.
So just to kind of wrap up the unit, we wanted to find a way to create some type of like authentic piece for the students to be proud of, take home, share with families. So we were able to print off everybody's story, put them in cool little covers for them, which they, when they saw them, they're like, wow, I get to take that home? Like, they were super excited just to have something that looked more like a published piece. So before they could take them home, they did have to present them out to each other, which created a really cool opportunity for us as ELA teachers, since we don't teach on the same team. So we had students from one class from each team. They met up in the auditorium. They were able to be partnered with somebody who was on the other team. They shared out their reading. They were able to listen for all the different components of the writing piece. So they were looking to identify the characters in their stories, the setting, the conflicts, the social issues, and they provided each other with feedback. They, gave compliments to each other, and it was a really nice way to just wrap up the whole unit and celebrate the work that they did. So, we're, like everybody said, we're super proud of them. They did a nice job, and I think it was something that they were very excited about as well. So, all in all.
So let's have all the students come up with their books, and then you're each going to answer your own question, and then board members will get a chance to see books individually.
Yes. Well, first, here you go.
Aiden, how'd you use Canva?
I use Canva to put more emotion and feeling into my book so I could express my characters more.
Awesome job. All right, Julia, how'd you choose your social issue?
I choose my social issue. At the beginning of the unit, we were looking at some examples, and one of the examples that stood out to me was bullying, and I knew that some elementary kids struggle with bullying, so I decided to choose that as my topic to help them understand like what's right and wrong.
And Luna, why did you choose your social issue?
Because I move a lot, and so I know what it's like not to fit in immediately at a new school, but like you can find your people.
Brielle, I'm going to come over to you now. How did you feel about publishing your story and having a finished piece?
I felt happy and content about my story. I'm glad it was able to finish, and I guess I feel mixed emotions about it because it's hard to finish something and think it's good, but I think I did pretty well on it.
And Kaylin, what choices did you make or were you able to make throughout this whole writing process?
We would get to like select the social issue of the story, and we could do like death, grief, not fitting, like bullying. We could also make choices like the storyline of our story and the characters that were in it, and how we wanted to portray the characters in our story so that someone could relate to it. We were also using Canva on our Chromebooks for the first time, and we were able to choose to make creative decisions while illustrating our stories and using the graphics.
Benji, what choices did you get to make during this process?
I got to choose what characters I got to put in there in the title of the book.
Ruby, what transferable skills did you learn from this unit, and how can you use them?
The transferable skills that I used in this unit was creativity. I used them in different ways which could help me later in life in STEAM or science.
All right, Leah, how were you able to put your own voice into your own writing?
I've been able to put my own voice into my story because ever since 4th grade, I enjoyed writing. I was often complimented on the works I made, which allowed me to gain the confidence to come here. I usually practice at home to get better at this hobby, and I write all kinds of fiction and poetry. I practiced early ever since I was 10 years old. Now I like to practice with different vocabulary and ways to express myself in writing sentences. Some examples of expressing myself in my stories are writing like the way I talk, since my words describe who I am, my character, and my personality. Another example of expressing myself in my stories is using imagery. I want to make sure the imagery I'm picturing in my head is clear to my reader.
Nick, what was your favorite part of the unit?
My favorite part of the unit was using Canva, and I'm working with a partner, and I'm looking forward to use Canva again.
All right, Jackson, what was your favorite part of this unit?
Something about my favorite part of this unit was the design of using Canva, and like Nick said, I would like to hope to use Canva in the future for like what I did here, like modeling the story, almost like a book. But I would hope to like to use Canva again in the future as one of my favorite units.
Awesome. So now what everyone is waiting for, we did put, the students are going to come meet with the board. We also brought you these like what should I ask or what can I ask sheets that the students are kind of prepared to share out. So we will give you those. And for everyone else that gets to watch, we made a Weave video of the kids' books. So they will just scroll through that you're able to read.
Thanks, Trish.
Nice job. This is great. Thank you.
Hi.
Hello. So you wrote a book, The New Kid? Hello.
All right, so
What did you write?
you told me you loved using Canva. I know a little bit about what that is.
Can I see it?
A little bit.
Read about poverty?
I never say that to my kids. I never that.
What does the title mean? Okay, what show?
You got to walk 3 miles to school and everything else, right?
Okay, cool.
So tell me,
Nice.
how'd you decide on your social issue?
I love how this looks. Well, Canva can be really, like, different to use.
What did you choose?
Really time consuming, too. Yeah.
What?
So, how did you choose your social issue?
Yeah, I think you did a great job as a
Do you walk it?
I love this.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Have you seen Anushavi's before? Oh no, I haven't. The design is so. Wait, can I see
So
some?
what transferable skills do you have from this unit? How do you think you can use them?
Yeah. What was your favorite part about making?
You have to like narrow it down, right? It's awesome.
What? Oh my god.
Transferable skills. Like, what were some of them?
So did you guys like find these pictures online and like put it together? Yeah. We still use Canva
was
at the
all
high
Canva?
school, so good thing you like it.
Right, he's based on a dog, not
No,
fitting
it's
in.
okay. It's like, what skills did you learn that you can use for anything else?
So what made you make it like
Let's see.
use the dog? What made
How
you
he
about
was for
fitting
your
in?
own
Is it something that happened to you? Do you put on the dog?
Oh my god, I like the little car right here.
So many little detail items, right?
Oh, the car's on. Okay, yeah. So is that like a little thing that like?
It's a great idea to do that. I think that's
Okay,
wonderful.
okay, so go for
So
it.
you
just
used
do it
imagery in
yourself.
here?
Oh, I like
Can I
that.
flip
And you're
through
going
it?
to have
Can I
to
see the pictures
continue
and stuff?
using them through high
Let's
school,
see.
even
That's
through
great.
college, so that's great. I
How do
love
you feel
using
about the
imagery
outcome?
and
Do
writing.
you like the way it turned out?
That's easy to add, right?
Make the story come alive and make the reader have like an experience. Yeah, and that's why I like imagery too,
Yeah.
because I like,
Definitely, I agree. I
like
think this
as
is
a reader, I want
So
to
what
have
made you come up with this
experience
idea?
story, and I want to be able to connect with it. and I
If
think
you
imagery
could have
allows
chose, would you
that.
choose this topic or would you choose a different one? If you kind of had.
I don't know if they had a talent show in McGee when I
What
was
was your favorite part of this unit?
Did it already happen, or it's coming up? Were you in it? Did you do anything in it?
So did they become friends?
How long did it take?
Okay.
They were being rude?
Yeah, okay, so you.
How
ended
did you
up kind of
choose your?
following it.
Well, you
Like,
told me that you
work
chose
over
it because
those
of the
days.
talent show.
I don't know what other questions to ask. I've kind of gotten through the list.
I know.
Have you?
No, I've just been asking random.
Yeah, no, me too.
Would they
I
become,
was gonna
they
come
become
down
friends?
there and bother Ruby just because I know her.
Oh, so the dogs became
What
friendly with the
skills
I know
have
what
you
you're
saying.
taken out of
That's
this?
We're on the golf team.
Yeah, I think it's awesome.
She did such a
I think
good
you
job.
did a really nice job.
So they never became friends though?
Visually nice, yeah.
So was this
Once
a
you're-
template Canva that
Once you start doing like slideshows and stuff,
Yeah,
you
was
can
that
do
just
those
a
on Canva,
template?
and then make
a
like.
pre-made template, or
If
did
you ever have to
make
make
your
like
own?
a poster for like a flyer for an event, you can use Canva for that. That's what I use it for. But
Welcome. Just looking at it.
how did you feel about publishing this? Good. Were you guys like
So would you
excited?
like to do a unit like this in the future, like something, or do you think it's good for?
So do you guys
Yeah, you
each
got
have
them
your
half
own?
off the page, it's good. And then, so
Yeah, I feel
Lola
like it's a
learned, so the
really,
new
like,
dog got
great
accepted
unit.
because Lola,
I would have to read it, but
yeah.
I think
Yeah, play
what
kickball, it's
made
great.
you
I like the way you use the dog to tell a
this
story
is
that
really
was,
great.
you know, about
I
you.
really like the idea of the grammar.
Yeah, but you
Piece of
gotta like,
oh,
you gotta
here you
get
go,
it on
stable
page.
together.
Are you guys
I
in
teach
sixth
high
grade, right?
school, and that's
Yeah.
like something
Very
that
nice
drives
job.
me crazy.
What would you do
when my
different if
high
you did it again?
schoolers- Like,
If you had a similar project, what would you do
with
different?
my high schoolers. Yeah,
One more time.
it's something
So this
I
was
go
all on
nuts
the
about every
Chromebooks,
day.
and then-
So I really, like, just from looking at it really quick, it looks like
I still have, yeah, I still have
Either
a book.
you're-
Like, we did like stories in third grade, I think, and I still have that book like in my
This is so
bookshelf.
cool.
So
Do you guys still use Storyboard that?
Yeah, I think it turned out really good. The final products look fantastic.
Like,
I remember.
you have really strong
I feel old, I'm
sentences,
sorry.
your grammar looks good. That's one of the things that drives me crazy about writing. And like
Do you think
appropriate
you would
So
use
even
the
like-
I like how you have the dialogue.
Even the bubbles and all that, you just put
Yeah,
that
I agree.
off the search thing.
Terms to help the reader.
I want to thank you.
know
Yeah,
what's
anything
on,
else?
like,
I mean, this is
eyes.
fantastic.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to tell me?
You by eighth
It's
grade.
just, it's so nice. I'm just really impressed.
This
You
is
should be
really
too.
good.
Yeah, I think these are really, really cool. This is a really cool unit. I wish we did something like that.
I know. I was telling them I use Storyboard that.
My son's name
Have
is
you guys
Jackson.
used Storyboard that?
Okay.
Which one do you like more, Canva or
J-A-C-K-S-O-N.
Storyboard?
Is that like you?
I agree.
How's yours spelled?
It's the comics. The
I like
comic
it.
strips.
Yeah, I prefer Canva to Storyboard.
Well, very nice to meet you.
What's your
Thank
name?
you.
Is your name Jackson? My son's name is
You
Jack.
guys did great speaking of
J-A-C-K. It's just
Yeah,
Jack.
yours all.
He's got an X.
And I like your shirt. I like the
Welcome.
dinosaur.
Nice job. Thank you.
wrap up.
We just kept it simple.
Thank you very much. You can thank your audience.
Thank you.
Very nice.
I know a lot of Jacksons like that.
It's been 6 years since I was that age. Stop it. Stop it. It feels so old.
One thing I gotta tell you.
I like
before
your
you go,
dinosaur shirt.
Before you dart out,
Where did you get that?
cookies. Make sure you get a cookie. Before you dart, make sure you get a
Really?
cookie
This
in the
year?
back, okay? There's cookies for you
Recently?
guys.
Oh,
Yeah,
I want
make
to
sure
get
you
my
get
son one, but if you didn't get it
Alright.
recently, they won't have it.
See,
That's
they're
a
right over
cool
there.
shirt.
Right on the counter. Right on the counter. See them? They gotta wait till we open them up. Some of them will open them up. Before they leave, make sure you
Yeah,
get the
oh,
cookies, okay?
All right, McGee students. We'll wrap this up. So obviously, as you can see, lots of pride, authentic task, rich conversation, and obviously to master something, you have to be able to simplify it. So put through this format, I can't compliment, first off, the team enough for bringing this new unit to life, and obviously the hard work of the students. So thank you, parents, for making this opportunity available and coming this evening so that we could share this wonderful work with the board. And everybody, if we could just give our students and staff a round of applause for a job well done. And the most important news that I have of this evening for you is that there are some cookies on your way out that could now be officially opened, and I do appreciate everyone's time this evening, so thank you.
So thank you so much to the McGee students and families that came out and teachers and everyone who's here tonight. That was really impressive. I loved learning about everything that you guys were learning and the transferable skills and how they transfer to other things. I was very impressed with the writing I saw. Does anyone else have anything that they want to share before we send them on their way?
I wish I could have done something like this. Like looking back and seeing how not only well spoken, but the outcome of these, it's so like to watch the changes and see how the curriculum has evolved. It's very inspiring, and I'm really happy that these students were able to present to us tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Grace.
You guys did a great job.
And I want to say how much better kids are at being young than I was when I was growing up, and like the issues you all tackle, you're so brave to tackle them, and I just applaud you for it. And I think you're only going to be better for it in your whole lives addressing these things now. So you should all be very proud of yourselves.
All right. Well, you don't need to stay. You can if you would like, if you want, by all means. You could also watch it on BHS TV on YouTube. But grab some cookies on your way out. Thank you so much for coming. That was really impressive. One more round of applause as they leave. Right, so we are going to move into the report of board members. Do any board members have anything that they would like to report?
I do. Oh, do you want to go first?
No, you got to go.
I was able to go to the art show at the New Britain American Museum of Art, and I was as blown away as I can be because I am so bad at art, and to see how good these kids were, and I mean, it was amazing. It really, really was. It was from every age group possible, so it was a really fun event that you could tell the kids and the families were super proud, and it was just a pleasure to be there.
Yeah, I echo that. It's just an amazing assortment of art that the students do, and you know, bravo to the students and to the teachers who really encourage that too. It's lifelong skills that they'll be bringing with them. I also went to the Career Exploration Fair with a colleague of mine to represent higher ed at the high school, which I think was right after our last meeting that same week. And that was just a great opportunity for students to see different career paths that they could take, whether going to college and studying in an area of interest, or for those who don't plan to go to a four-year school, there's just the opportunities they can do with some certificate programs, and you know, great opportunity for them. That was freshmen, sophomores, juniors, I think. Sophomores, juniors, yeah. So good timing for that too, for them to see all of the different things they could be doing.
I attended the BHS baseball game that they had at the Yard Goats, was super excited. The Little League just happened to tell us the night before. But I'm glad I didn't miss it because it was a great night and they had a great game and my kids loved it and could sit wherever they wanted, which was even better. So congratulations to the baseball team on their amazing season.
Anyone have anything else? All right, we're going to move over to our report of student representatives. So.
The baseball game at what is better known as the Yard Goat Stadium. So the Berlin Redcoats extended their undefeated season over Plainville at Duncan Park, better known as Yard Goat Stadium, last Friday with a 12-2 win. The team is currently 9-0. Luke Wadstrup had a home run, Johnny O'Brien had 3 RBIs, and Zach Catalano, Ryan Lavender, and Cody Puzio had 2 hits each.
Next, this past Thursday, BHS hosted its Culture Day celebration, which was an event celebrated all day in which students and staff were invited to bring homemade dishes from their cultures. Then, BHS members can learn more about these respective cultures not only through food, but also through music and conversation.
Next up, Berlin's speech class wowed the crowd with their very own fictitious products and pitches during last Friday's Shark Tank show. Products such as the Lawn Gator, Sandaway, and Runway Ready, along with many more, were presented to students. Congratulations on Push Energy for winning.
Next, last week, students who excelled in their NGSS assessment were recognized for their hard work in the science department. A very special congratulations to Philip Bogatz, who earned a perfect score on the exam.
On May 1st, the distinguished members of National Honor Society will be celebrated during their induction ceremony. Among the honored students are those who exemplify excellence in both academics and community service. Congratulations on all the incoming members on this significant achievement.
In anticipation of prom, Berlin High participated in a Spirit Week. The themes consisted of PJ Day, Purple for Ryan T. Lee, Dress to Impress, Flag Day for Culture Day, and Color Wars on Friday for Field Hour.
And last but not least, this past Saturday, the junior prom took place at the Farmington Polo Club, providing students with a memorable evening filled with cherished moments and friends. Thank you to all the junior class officers, as well as the junior advisors, and everyone else involved in making this joyful event possible. It was an amazing time.
That is all we have for tonight.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for them? Well, that was a great update. Thank you. Moving on to committee reports. Was there a curriculum committee meeting since the last time we met?
There was.
Okay, would you like to share out?
Yeah, not too much. We did set the goals again for the year, and we didn't make any changes. We thought that the goals and the vision for the curriculum committee still was appropriate, and so no changes there. And then we did make one small revision to the calendar a couple years out. We forgot that we wanted to keep a professional development day on referendum day, so we put that back. And I think that will be discussed later.
Yep.
And that's it.
All right. Peter, would you like to share out about the F&O committee?
We discussed the budget, which we will discuss later in the meeting. Some of the topics covered were better management of the bus usage, also potential impacts to our budget with legislation regarding the potential salary raises of teachers to a higher minimum, and also just some brief discussions around potential cuts, which we will get into a little bit later.
And on April 7th, the Community Engagement Committee met. We talked about the snapshot that was then sent out by the superintendent on April 11th. We discussed our goals as well. So that is it for committee reports. Correspondence to the board.
Yes, I have 2 correspondents to the board. Dear Berlin Board of Education and staff, thank you so much for the beautiful orchid and thinking of me when my loss of my mother. I was very fortunate to be working in Berlin as we navigated my mother's illness. The 6 years in Berlin support will forever be appreciated by me and my family. In gratitude, Evelisa Mayett. Dear members of the Board of Education, staff, and Brian, thank you very much for the lovely plan that you set in honor of my father. We were so grateful to have your support at this time. Sincerely, Patty McManus Engel, social worker at McGee.
Thank you. All right, moving on to audience and citizen. If anyone would like to approach the board, you may just state your name and address, and you are limited to 3 minutes per resident. You can just come up to the table. You has.
I know you
Nice
missed
to
me.
see you. Yes, we do.
Hold on, I got notes. Okay, I'm Jan. Is this on?
Yeah.
Jan Zagorski, 63 Grandview Avenue. For those of you who don't know me, I used to be the audience of citizens for how many years, Brian?
A lot.
A lot. 6, 7?
Whenever this boys swim team started, before then. So a long time. I taught health at McGee. I retired after 25 years in June, 10 years in Glastonbury and miscellaneous private school jobs prior to that, 39 years of education. Still coaching, which is why I'm on this side of the mic. I've always been someone who has been very involved when it gets to budget time. Back before the high school renovation, I was on the committee that was pushing for a new high school. My kids loved it back then. I didn't hear much that was going on with the budget this year, and that concerned me a little bit because I didn't understand. I didn't know if it was because I wasn't in the building anymore or I missed something. So I contacted Brian and Julia, and then I decided to attend the Finance Committee meeting at 7 o'clock on Thursday morning in my pajamas on my deck, which is why the camera was off, and my cup of coffee. And I just want to make some comments. I understand that cuts are difficult, and some of the discussions I heard from members as for other options for cuts, I think I've lived through, and I just want to address a couple of them. I'm not sure I'm going to stay for the whole meeting, just because, you know, I don't have to. Okay, so the first thing, the pay-to-play and canceling of freshman sports. It was addressed that it happened years ago. Freshman sports and McGee sports and all activities were canceled. That was the year I had a freshman, I had an 8th grader, and I had a 6th grader. So I had kids in every school. There were absolutely no activities for kids after school. I think some of the teams took a hit after that because they didn't have their stages of growth, both at McGee and as freshmen at the high school. I know that that's not a priority, but when we're talking about keeping kids off of devices and being outside and active, cutting sports and cutting other after-school activities is a real problem. We have latchkey kids. We have kids who they're not active. I was PE and health. I saw what I saw. So I think with the economy the way it is, it's going to be difficult for some people to come up with pay-to-play if it's a pay-to-play situation. It will not come back. If we start pay-to-play, it will not come back. The reason it came back, was that 15, 20 years ago, was because it was it was an awful budget year. I remember sitting in that meeting. The people presenting the budget would not let the students speak. They said only registered voters are allowed to speak. It was very obvious that people wanted money put into the budget instead of it being cut where it was. The budget went down, and they took more out, which is why now we have that second question. So that's why that one came back. So that's as far as that goes. There was a question about the need for K-3 needing one-to-one technology. As both an educator and a parent, and still hoping to be a grandparent. 3 married sons, no grandchildren, grandpuppies and grandkitties, that's all I have. Anyway, I think the more we can teach kids at a younger age responsible use of technology, the better it is. Not to throw any district under the bus, there was a news story this week where a teacher got put on leave because of being on an adult website. Middle schoolers found the teacher on the adult website and sent pictures around to each other. That's not responsible use for middle schoolers, not even addressing the teacher issue. So if we start them young, I think it would be better for them. And, I mean, the kids are better at it than we are anyway. The other thing is, I was at a ballet production last weekend, which, if you know me, you know is very bizarre. But they ran out of programs and they had QR codes. So everyone has to know how to use the QR codes too. So that's another reason the kids have to learn that. I just think that after hearing the work that Ashley, I was very impressed with the work Ashley did. Very well spoken, Ashley. And Brian, I think
as much as I don't like to see some of the cuts, obviously. I think that it was a lot of time and effort, and I would hate to see the referendum, well, I can't even say that because I'm at a Board of Ed meeting. I just hope that you don't take more out on the kids.
Thank you, Jan.
You're welcome. I am here all the time, you know, just online.
Just online, I know. It's nice to see you. Which you can't do here. So. But if you don't want to stay, you know, you can go home and watch it on YouTube.
I used to live on Grandview Ave. I've never seen you.
The bottom of the hill?
Yeah.
I'm at the top of the hill.
That's gonna be wet. I used to walk all the time.
Do we have any other members of the community that would like to approach the board? No? Yeah. Just state your name and address. It's okay if it is. It can be. Anything you want. 3 minutes to
No, I
say
don't even
whatever
need
you gotta
that.
say.
Hi,
Just
Karen Sturdivant, 890 Norton Road. I just wanted, there's a few of them in the room, to say that I'm really grateful for the staff and the administration at Willard. My student and my incoming student, who's not even there yet, are just very happy and very grateful for their experience there. I, as a parent, am as well, and I'm just very impressed and pleased with them, and I just wanted you all to know that. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you.
That was really it. So.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Would anyone else like to approach the board? All right. Well, thank you to both of you for addressing the board. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion for consideration?
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Do we have a second? So the motion by Melissa, the second by Jen. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Okay, we can move to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Hang on. Did everyone vote? Okay. All those opposed? So the vote carries 8-0. Okay, moving on to our facilities update. Ashley, we're going to turn it over to Ashley Dorsey, the Director of Finance and Operations, to provide us with a facilities update.
I'm going to start with the HVAC update. So the bid packages for the upcoming HVAC projects over at Griswold and Hubbard Elementary Schools are being finalized this week and are expected to be published later on this week, maybe by Thursday or Friday. That's typically about 3 to 4 weeks out on the street, then evaluation through our Public Building Commission. The Berlin Grounds and Parks and Recs Department installed the new swings over at Hubbard over April break. The reconfiguration was necessary because the location of the YMCA outdoor play area is going to be the new location for the chiller pads over at Hubbard, so they needed to reconfigure the outdoor play space for the YMCA daycare. So that took place over April break, and we are currently scheduling the fence install and waiting state inspection for that to be open up over at Hubbard for the YMCA daycare. Brian and I received a copy of the flooring conditions report earlier today regarding the BHS flooring. It's going to be reviewed by the Public Building Commission and other town departments to determine what our next steps are going to be. The report will be shared with the board on Friday and in the superintendent's update report. Discussions for you may.
And the hope, thank you. The hope is that, I know the Public Building Commission's meeting on Thursday. The mayor and I have been in conversations about the floor. There's most likelihood the entire floor at BHS will need to be taken up at some point. So we're hoping to have a remediation plan that we can then publicize, which I'll share with you hopefully on Friday with the report. I know the thought was that the report would come with the remediation plan, and I think the closest will be in the same week, hopefully this week. So it'll be the report and then what the plan is and how to remediate the problem. Sorry, Ashley.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
Discussions for the outdoor play area for the Berlin Public Schools pre-K program over at Berlin High School. We started our discussions on March 26th, and as of right now, the town and BOA staff are working together to schedule this project to start hopefully in the summer to open for after Labor Day for our pre-K program. Bids for the architectural and design services for the McGee Science Lab closed on March 27th. 3 firms bid on the projects, and the bids were sent to the Public Building Commission for review on March 31st. And finally, site visits were held over at Willard Elementary School last week and this upcoming week regarding the renovation of the 2 student lavatories closest to the main office. Project pricing is expected to filter in within the next few weeks, and more to follow on what that project's going to entail. We anticipate to start that project as soon as skids get out, so June 16th, but more to follow on that one. Any questions?
Thank you. You'll be back up shortly.
I know.
Don't go far.
I'm ready.
All right, moving on to non-renewal of contracts for non-tenured staff. I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you. We do have 3 non-renewals. These are 1-year contracts, but we are required to formally non-renew them. The names of those people: Anna Bidwell, Kristen Kavanaugh, and Rachel Kavanaugh. What typically happens, though, if you have a non-tenured teacher not in your 1-year contract in a permanent position, and they're not being renewed or not being offered a contract for following, you often give them an opportunity to resign. If they resign, we do not bring them to the Board of Ed. They just resign, and then the position is then vacated for the next year. So these are 1-year contracts only that we would offer if someone's on maternity leave or someone's on leave. So just so the board's aware.
Do we have a motion for consideration?
I move that the contracts of employment for non-tenured teachers Anna Bidwell, Kristen Kavanaugh, and Rachel Kavanaugh not be renewed for the 2025-2026 school year upon their expiration at the end of the current school year.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
So the motion by Brian, second by Gina. Okay. Any discussion? All right, we can move to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Vote carries 8-0. Okay, moving on to the Healthy Food Certification Statement for July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
This is an annual event that we need a certification based on Section 10-215F of the Connecticut State General Statutes. Requires each local Board of Education for public school participating in the National School Lunch Program must take action to certify whether all food items sold to students separately from the reimbursable meals will or will not meet Connecticut nutrition standards, and whether to allow food and beverages exemptions. 2 motions are required.
Do we have, for the first motion, do we have motion for consideration?
I move that pursuant to CGS Section 10-215F, the Berlin Board of Education certifies that all food items offered for sale to students in the school under its jurisdiction and not exempted from the Connecticut nutrition standards published by the Connecticut State Department of Education will comply with the Connecticut nutrition standards during the period of July 1, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. This certification shall include all food offered for sale to students separately from reimbursable meals at all times and from all sources, including but not limited to school stores, vending machines, school cafeterias, culinary programs, and any fundraising activities on school premises sponsored by the school or non-school organizations and groups.
Do we have a second? So the motion by Jen, the second by Jess. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 8-0. Do we have a motion for consideration for the second one?
Did such a good job the first time, Jen.
I'll move that the Berlin Board of Education will allow the sale to students of food items that do not meet the Connecticut nutrition standards and beverages not listed in Section 10-221Q of the Connecticut General Statutes, provided that the following conditions are met. 1, the sale is in connection with an event occurring after the end of the regular school day or on the weekend. 2, the sale is at the location of the event. And 3, the food and beverage items are not sold from a vending machine or school store. An event is an occurrence that involves more than just a regularly scheduled practice, meeting, or extracurricular activity. For example, soccer games, school plays, and interscholastic debates are events, but soccer practices, play rehearsals, and debate team meetings are not. The regular school day is the period from midnight before to 30 minutes after the end of the official school day. Location means where the event is being held and must be the same place as the food and beverage sales.
Do we have a second?
I'll second. You want my hearing?
So the motion by Gina, second by Jen. Any discussion? Hearing none, we can move to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, that carries 8-0. Superintendent Benigni and Ashley Dorsey are going to present to us the status of the Board of Education adopted budget for the 2025-2026 school year. I just want to say we did have our F&O committee meeting very early last Thursday morning. I think I was still very jet lagged. But we, you know, I think Brian and Ashley and the district staff and admin have done a very good job at looking at where the district is, what they think can be reduced, and then making those reductions based on their knowledge and their expertise. So I was impressed with, you know, I think Jan had said it as well, at, you know, how well Ashley presented it, but they did put a lot of time into this. So I'm going to turn it over to them.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the members of the cabinet administration for the time that was spent discussing where the possible reductions could be, as well as the F&O committee and the additional board members that attended the last F&O meeting. We have a one-pager that that's being distributed to that kind of breaks down. But also, we can get into deeper reports that break down, you know, what the benefits are and so on. But we look at the total picture of first the positions, proposed cuts. Position-wise, there's a clerical position at the Board of Ed here. It's a reduction in force. Marlene Dema is retiring after a number of years, but that's not the position that's being reduced. We're reducing a PPS administration assistant, and then, but that reduction, she'll take Marlene's position. So it's a reduction of a position, but the person is still keeping a job at the same salary that they had. So as any time we make reductions, we look to maintain individuals and not have people not eliminate their position. So that was the rationale there. Teacher, social worker at Willard. This was our last reduction. We went through the list, is trying to find that last $100,000. And not that we don't need a social worker, because there definitely is a need. But if you look at the last 6 to 7 years, we've added ESS clinicians, 1 at the middle school, 2 at the high school, who are licensed social workers dealing with some of our most fragile population. We added 2 social workers at the elementary. We added a school psychologist at the middle school. We added a school counselor at the high school. So in looking at that, we really have done a lot of balancing of the budget at the middle school and high school, and we cannot afford, we did look to, with the retirements and the elimination of position, we did look to combine a math and science position at the high school, and the hope that we could eliminate an FTE there and save the social worker. Unfortunately, we could not have enough sections that the need of the students was greater than the ability to do that, so we did need to maintain the math and the science position as individual teaching positions, 1.0 FTE. So the social worker, so the question would be, how is that position going to be filled? It is at Willard, only at Willard, because that is where the least senior person is working. So the least senior social worker is at Willard, that's why it's Willard. So the need there will be backfilled by other social workers and psychologists in the district. So it won't be that Willard's going to do without, it just won't have the full 1.0 FTE there. Duty para at Griswold School. There was an additional duty para added at Griswold. It does balance off compared to the other schools, so Griswold's not going to have less than the others, and it's a 0.3. Para-interventionist, math at Griswold. Unfortunately, we don't like to lose any of our interventionists, but the need was there. Again, balancing things with the other schools. Teacher, social studies, there's a retirement. That's Dave Basso's position at the high school. We're able to do that without, we have enough FTE where we can still offer enough social studies courses without filling that for next year. Teacher at the elementary in Willard, that's looked at a retirement and not to fill based on class sizes. Para student management, this is Ed Kemling. Ed Kemling's a former police officer in town. He's the gentleman who sits in the front of the high school. He also does attendance at the high school. Not to say that Katie doesn't want that position because of the attendance issue, but again, looking to where we can cut FTE. That's Ed Kemling's position. He's retiring. And a special ed teacher, a reduction to budget. It was a part-time person hired at the high school. We're able to reduce that by 0.5. And that gets us to roughly $500,000. Just so you know, we needed to cut the budget by $1,500,000 to get to that 4%, and that's including an additional 215. So, you know, we're a third of the way there. I'm going to ask Ashley to look at the next. Is there any questions about staffing first, or do you want to see the totality of everything, all the cuts? Any questions on staffing? Anytime we cut staff, we try to maintain people. We also try to look at across the spectrum, that there's clerical, there's teachers, there's paras. You know, we did look at custodial. We could not afford to cut custodians. We're still less in the custodial area than we were. And the board with the new, with the police station being behind us, the Board of Ed used to be cleaned by town custodians. It's now going to be shifted back to Board of Ed custodians. So the ability to cut a custodian was not something we could do.
I think also in terms of administration, because every year prior to this, we've also looked at cutting administration. I don't think there's any place to cut from for administration at this point. So just so everyone knows, like, it's not being ignored. Like, we're down an assistant superintendent. We've reduced all the assistant principals at the elementary school. We had to bring them back over time. So there's no place to cut from with administration. They're already really thin, right? Would you?
The only, and I've said this to the board with the previous board members, and it was not taken, but I feel like I have to say this, and the administrator knows that. At the middle school, you have 3 administrators at the middle school. One is a 10-month, and Abby does a phenomenal job. I know people are very partial to keeping that. I think that most middle schools, though, you would have 2 with that size. Not to say it doesn't function with 3. I did not put that on the list, based on, you know, yes, Chris is right behind me here, but he was a principal at the elementary. He's doing a fantastic job, but he's new principal coming in mid-year. Devin's a brand new assistant principal there, so I did not add that to this list. But it's, you know, that's the only other position I would say. Any other questions on staffing? Okay, we'll go on.
Okay. So I'm just going to present the other categories that gets us up to that $1.5 million. So in the non-certified staff line, I'm going to reduce the per diem substitute budget by $40,000. We got some notification of some maternity leaves, and typically when people take an extended leave, they are only paid out for a certain number of weeks, and then they are no longer paid, and then their long-term sub is paid through the sub line. So I'm hoping for some good news in our per diem substitute line. So we're going to take a reduction in there. I met with Craig Szymanski, our IT director, last week to tell me what he could give me in his contracted services. We reviewed all of our software licenses, and we contacted some vendors to see if we could take advantage of some multi-year discounts, if we could absorb some services through through a different service, if we've got 2 platforms that are essentially doing the same thing, maybe eliminating some of that. So I'm going to reduce the contracted services line by $41,000. The tuition line, when the high school opened up their enrollment for next year, we had budgeted for 2 sections of the CNA program. However, enrollment only shows that we've got 1 semester worth of interest there, so we're reducing the tuition for the CNA classroom to 1 section. Transportation, with the help of the town council, we've received some substantial funding to start replacing some of our older vehicles. So with that, we're very grateful for that. So with that, we've been seeing a slight reduction in some of our repair and maintenance costs. So we're going to reduce some of that, and we're also going to take a look at our fuel lines and see if we could do a little better on our fuel contract. Supplies, equipment, and all other, it's going to be just like several years that we've had in the past, and it will be a 0% increase moving forward for all supplies, equipment, and all other lines.
I just caution about the supplies, knowing that the increase that we're all paying for items. Take a 0 hit in supplies. We'll have a better idea as the year goes, you know, where we sit with the supply line being zeroed out. That's really, there's no increase, but we know the price to purchase items has increased, so. And the equipment, being typically that's end of the year funding that then supplants that, which we buy our technology with, and so that's the typical move when we go to balance the budget at that. Any questions about any of these items, or any of the first items with staffing? And that's that 1,500,000 to balance the budget.
Can you just, so the referendum is tomorrow, then after the referendum, this conversation continues until it's adopted by the town council, correct?
If by chance the referendum passes tomorrow, we could still have a conversation, because these are the potential cuts to all of you, to balance the budget at 4%, with 215,000 coming in for the reading program. So these would be the reductions that would balance the budget at that. Should the referendum fail, whether it's increase or decrease, then we'd have to come back and adjust these reductions.
So is there any discussion that anyone at the table wants to have before our next meeting, so now, that, you know, is worth discussing? And the student board reps can also chime in if you have any.
I guess the only
any
question I could
wisdom.
ask before that, if by chance the budget increased, what would you want to see come back in this list? And if we had a decrease, we'd have to have I would probably go through the process again with the F&O committee meeting and then coming back to the board, well, similar to what we're doing tonight. But if there was something to say, you know, by chance, I can tell you the last one that was taken out was the social worker. That was the last piece that was reduced. But there also was trying to merge those two teachers to make a science math split position. You know, Ashley had to go back and really fine tune some of these lines to get that extra 100,000 in there also. So some of this is really trimmed.
I mean, the social worker is the one that I'm most concerned about. You know, it's never great to see classroom teachers' positions being cut. I know, you know, we're talking about retirements. It's not the person, it's the position. But these are, you know, very important subjects that are being cut too, and the elementary as well. You know, the equipment piece bothers me too. I think, you know, if you don't replace equipment the way we should be doing it, there's more staff time involved in fixing equipment. There's more expenses around, you know, halfway through the year needing to do something, or the students just don't have the equipment that they should have to succeed in their classes. So that's a huge concern too, and I know it's been going on now for several years, and we talk about if there is surplus at the end of the year, and sometimes those conversations get, you know, all over the place. I always worry that there won't be surplus. You know, we've talked about outplacements, and we have more than we ever have had in recent years, and that's about 7%, I think, of our overall budget. So there's concerns there. None of that's guaranteed at the end of the year.
I think the good point you bring up is typically in the budget, we would hold a kindergarten position. That is not in the budget. We looked at the K numbers today. Right now, one of the schools were 19, 19, and 20. And typically, we have students register in the summer. So those are large K classrooms. We don't have that position in the budget right now. The other thing we typically do is hold an outplacement. The one outplacement we had held, where you typically have 25, that's about our average of outplacements. We're at 32 right now. And roughly, we're spending, for those outplacements, it is 7%. And I want to say it's close to, you know, it's like $3.5 million on the 32 outplacements. And there are other students, and then Linda could speak to this more, that are in line with potential outplacements, and the hope is we can bring some of the outplacements back like we do every year. But those are large variables that we're, you know, not aware of. And the technology piece, you're right, as we get tighter and tighter because we're trying to maintain staff, the amount of money left at the end of the year could be reduced. And the other piece I just want to bring up with the budget is we usually get paid by choice, and we get multiple payments in the year. We've been contacting them repeatedly for Hartford to get our payment, and right now we're waiting on $1.2 million in reimbursements from Choice for this current year. Hartford, it's Choice, but it's from Hartford, so the money comes from Hartford Public Schools. So I have a phone call into the Commissioner of Education, Charlene Russell Tucker, to ask about that.
I think there is one thing that, I know town council always says, Mark is here right now, if we get in a position where we need it and we don't have it, just go ask. I think if, the kindergarten sizes over the summer get to a point where we need to add that teacher, we really should go ask. Or if the outplacements mess up the balanced budget, we need to go ask. It's always been said we've never taken advantage of it. I'm not saying we need to, but with the K classes or the outplacements, we know that's there.
It's a promise, but it's not a guarantee. Setting a budget where it should be is a guarantee.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't disagree, but I just don't know the day before a referendum anything's going to change at this point. I think the timing of where our meeting was and just how things go, 4% I think is the largest we've sat here with while I've been on the board, and I think, Brian and Ashley and the cabinet have done a really good job at putting this together. It's not easy. This is probably the hardest part of the year and your job. I know it's the most challenging part of our year as board members.
I think when you're dealing with the variables that you're dealing with, and that was the one light bulb moment I had when I said, how can you offset salaries on something that you're not sure you're gonna have at the end of the year? That just, but I understand now through the process that, you've had a certain amount of money that's been allocated for certain things, and then when that money gets less and less, it's like, well, now what are we gonna do? Where are we gonna move the money now? It's like a puzzle that you have to constantly keep shifting around. And it's, again, like you say, it's not guaranteed, but you have to start somewhere. So here we are, and we start with this, and we see what we can do. No one ever wants to see anything cut. But how can realistically, with inflation and everything else, I just don't know how you can possibly predict, where you're gonna be the following year if you've always had these variables. It's almost impossible, you gauge it and.
You're absolutely right about the variables, but I think the other piece that was discussed in F&O, and I hope that, Peter, you brought it up, you're at 4.2% to maintain your staff. That's without anything else impacting the budget, which are all these things here that you're seeing, supplies, equipment, and so on. So if you're getting, this year it's 4, but if you're getting a typical 3 or 3.2, that's a $500,000 cut to the staffing line right off the start. That's 1% less than what you need. So every year you're trying to find that 500. So you have to look for other ways. So, and I know it was brought up tonight with Jan Zagorski speaking. Do you look at pay to play, which is not something that is going to be happy with citizens? Do you look for parking? They're small measures. It's not going to do it. But otherwise, you keep going into the staff. You have to keep cutting the staff to get there. And you're at a point where you can't have enough courses at the high school based on the population. You need the number of teachers at the elementary to keep class sizes consistent. If you cut, years ago we cut media specialists at the elementary. We tried sharing a dean of students at the elementary. We looked at positions as such to make those cuts, but that's the part eventually you get up to. There's no more ability. And I don't know with the social studies, this year we're able to do the course master at the high school. Next year that social studies position might be needed because there's not enough courses to be offered.
And we've found ourselves in years, 1 year cutting, then the next year having to add back in.
But to your point, Julia, though, and I agree that if we did get to a situation where we said, oh, we don't have enough to operate, we could go back to the town council and say, we need an extra, whatever, $200,000 or $150,000. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if that's an actual figure, but that's an option too. I mean, it's not like off the table completely where we would just be left hanging.
Right. The hope what would happen is we'd pull from other accounts, and the end of the year funds would be less, which then would impact the technology purchase, which would then, not have the technology. So that's hope, but unless it was an exorbitant amount of outplacements or needs,
Gina, your ring is so peaceful and zen.
I did want to circle back to a couple of the items we talked about in the F&O meeting, specifically the bus situation. And just to bring the whole board in the loop, and please correct my numbers if I'm off, typically when we contract a bus for the day, it's $300 a day. So we have about 21 buses. We're talking about $6,500 a day to run these buses. Buses by contract and by capacity can seat 77 kids to a bus, 3 to a seat. That's probably not the preference of most parents, and I understand that. But the issue becomes is that by CT state law, we must provide transportation, but the question becomes, are we monitoring, regulating, and enforcing and getting a good number of how many students are actually riding these buses? Because when you look at the pickup lines and the drop-off lines, they're a lot longer than the surveys we send out would indicate in terms of how many kids are actually riding the bus consistently. And even shaving one bus off of the fleet in a given year is a savings of approximately $50,000. So we can't do anything about that in this year because it's a 3-year contract. Do you know
It's
what?
a 5-year. We've got 2 more years left.
Okay, so it's a 2-year expiration, but this is something that moving forward, the board and the administration, I think we have to have a very candid discussion about how to get a better measure and enforcement of students riding the bus, because it's a massive expense. Jen had brought up a good suggestion about sending out a letter and illustrating the cost, maybe getting, when people see the cost of the service we're providing, they may kind of be more honest and open with how often they're riding the bus. We can only hope. The other issue that may come down the pike is the raise in the minimum salaries for teachers. I would obviously support that because teachers, starting off out of school with a 4 or 5 year degree, they make around $55,000 in our district. The proposal was to move it to about $63,500. Ashley explained that at face value, in our district at this given moment, if that law were to pass, that would be a cost to us of about $30,000. However, we have to consider that the rest of the pay scale is also going to go up because other teachers who are at $65,000 and their respective unions are going to want a bump in pay. Assuming a 3% raise, that's $700,000 or a 1.4% increase. The likelihood of the bill going through is wishy-washy, but you never know until June 8th or whenever it is that the legislature shuts down for the season. Lastly, speaking about smaller expenses, I think we do have to have discussions around some of our professional development, around CABE, how much we're spending on that. Is it something we want to continue to pursue? Does that body reflect the position of the district legislatively or professionally? Do we want to continue to allocate money to that when we are talking about budget cuts that are only going to get more difficult in the future, right? The costs are only going to continue to go up and we have to look for ways to save money. Do we know offhand what our CABE subscription is?
It's about
20.
It's a little bit more.
It's up above
Yeah,
1,000
it's about 22,000.
22,000, okay.
That's just for the subscription, and then there's certain professional developments that require additional payments.
Mm-hmm. So that's all I have at the moment.
My only comment with CABE, I'm not opposed to having it on the table as something we should discuss, but I think we need to have a really good backup plan as to how we're going to onboard and new board members internally if we do that, how we're going to utilize our lawyers in different way, our law firm that we work with in different ways, and just the ongoing professional development for when I have taken advantage of not only the in-person conferences, but also some of the online recorded sessions, and they have been very helpful, especially as you look at some of the new policies that Connecticut is putting out and understanding those. So I just want to be sure there's something there if that's not what we're using.
I'll jump in. So as you guys know, I serve on the CABE Board of Directors. I'm an area director for our area, and that has actually helped me tremendously grow as a board chair. So the more involved I got with CABE, the more professional development I gained. I feel like my knowledge and understanding has improved. So considering, you know, who the next board chair will be and what professional development they will have available to them. So last Thursday, there was a CABE board chair check-in. I attend that. I'm on a CABE distribution list for just board chairs where people get to share, you know, concerns or problems. And, you know, though I may not be having the same problem, I could read through them and learn from other examples. So for me and my growth, I know it's been really impactful. I know last year we had this conversation, the board was saying, okay, we'll keep it. I personally would not have gotten on the board of directors if we were gonna take it off. So, I don't know, that's kind of embarrassing for me. I can't continue to serve on the board of directors if we don't renew. So, I don't know, it feels a little personal, but maybe not. We just had CABE come out with 3 awards that recognize not just the board, but other people in the district, what they're doing. At our, you know, twice a year, I think, we recognize students with CABE Leadership Awards. So I'm not saying that, you know, we're paying our membership to get awards, but it also provides an opportunity where we can recognize students and staff of Berlin Public Schools. Through my service on the board of directors, I've been appointed to a 2-year task force on the State Accountability Index. There's 1 more year left. It will finish as my term finishes. But again, if we don't renew, I'm going to have to step off of all of that. And it's really positive representation of our board in Berlin Public Schools. And some other things that I have found beneficial, like I said, the board chair check-ins, we have those. I thought the Roberts Rules training was actually helpful. I know I walked away learning a lot. I did go to Day on the Hill this year. I actually brought some of my students with me, and it was actually great. I had never been because I typically don't take the day off. I go to the legislative debrief, and then you know, all the publications they send out when I have time to read them. Whether people are taking advantage of the free things like I am or not, I don't know, but I know I am, and I know it helps me. So that's just my 2 cents on that, but.
In regards to Jen's point, a lot of the programs that are offered by CABE are still able to be purchased or used, whether you're a member or not. Additionally, the discount for being a member is very small. It's also a state mandate that new members go through Board of Education training. That was a recent law, and the materials would be provided, and we have purchased those. My deeper problem with CABE is that while I have no issue allocating funds to actual professional development, using their classes and other resources, some of the services that we utilize are just duplicates. We have Shipman and Goodwin for legal counsel. We have Shipman and Goodwin that reviews our policies, which you'll see on your agenda today, and other resources. It's just that outside of the additional cost of paying for the courses and materials, which we do whether you're a member or not of CABE, it's more a question of, is CABE advocating for the Berlin Board of Ed specifically? Are their values and mission in line with our district's mission? I think that it is a valuable source of professional development, but in a way, the board by itself has its ability to act legislatively, to have advocacy at the state capitol. If the 9 of us wanted to put together a letter and write to a representative or represent the district, we could sit down and agree on that. There are other boards of education that do that. You may see it in your email, like Ellington regarding food concerns and such with the National Lunch Program. In a way, I feel like CABE kind of makes us a little too dependent on a third party. It doesn't encourage us to, exercise our own muscles, so to speak, and use our own voice. I don't like the idea that the board is essentially using a third party to act as its voice. I think there's agenda items on the state CABE 2025 agenda that are in stark contrast with what this board would actually support, such as I have concerns that some of their items on the state agenda, which they legislate or try to advocate, is trying to repeal state-mandated lunch breaks for teachers and public school employees. I don't think there's anyone on this board that would advocate for
I
that.
actually would, as a teacher. It
Okay.
extended our school day, and it gave us more work during the day. So a lot of the teachers I know actually have a hard time with this one. So it made our school day longer.
Okay. Also, it's concerning because it leans quite in one direction. I think that as a Board of Education, you have to consider all stakeholders. You have to think about the administration. You have to think about the staff. You have to think about the town and everyone. But when I look through this state agenda from CAVE, it's very, for lack of a better word, kind of anti-teacher, anti-public school employee. A lot of the proposals are written in a way to erode contracts that teachers have already agreed to, and trying to erode tenure and benefits that teachers have secured for themselves. And I have an issue that it just leans so heavily in one direction. And our district has good relationships with our teachers, with our employees, with our unions. We negotiate fair contracts. We have good relations with all of our bargaining units and come to fair conclusions. And I question, why are we giving money to this third-party organization that is actively working against the thing that we work so hard to establish in our own district, which is mutual respect for all of our stakeholders? So again, I have no problem using professional development money towards tangible educational resources for the board and its growth. I just struggle with the fact that we're giving money into this organization for those other purposes.
Would anyone else like to share? Yeah.
How do the late buses tie in with everything? Just because as I don't have a car, so I do take a bus, and I've seen like not only are the high school buses pretty empty, I feel like I think it depends on the bus you're on, but as someone who takes the late bus where I take the bus to McGee, my late bus personally only has, including me, 3 other kids. So is there any way, like, I don't know how the contract works, but is there any way like those buses could be replaced with like vans or something? Because I feel like that could cut out a lot.
Yeah, Ashley or Brian, do you want to talk about that? I think that's.
Did you say something about vans?
Yeah, be replaced with vans.
I don't know how the vans work either.
So let me speak first and Ashley can add to it, but the late buses are not mandated. The late buses are a courtesy to students that need a ride home. The issue why there's so many is to take, if there was one, and the late bus had to travel to everywhere around town, it would take too long. So there's multiple late buses that cover a certain zone, and then sometimes late buses can have 2 students on it, or 3 students on it, you're absolutely right. So that could be, it's in our contract right now, so we could, but in 2 years, we could not have late buses, and that would be a reduction. I don't know the next, is that, you know the exact number?
I think that like hurts the kids though, and if we're talking about what's gonna benefit them, because that would hurt you, right? Like you wouldn't be able to stay after school for all the different things. Yeah.
I think, you're absolutely right, but I think when you're looking at reduction of a staff member or the late bus, or if a student had to stay after, they then have to be on school grounds till 4 o'clock when they get a ride or something. Instead, we'd have to have staffing there or somewhere where they could be. There's other ways to go about it. But we've had late buses for years because of that reason. We want students, if they're involved in a club or they need to stay after school, to have access to get home, so.
So the late buses that we run, so we typically run them usually Tuesday through Thursday. For the late bus run is actually part of the daily rate contract. So for the 6 or 7 late buses that we have, those 7 buses, I believe it is 7 buses, are incorporated in the daily rate. So we're not paying extra. It's an extra service that NBT is providing us in our contract. It's something we negotiated through, but it is for those 7 buses. It's part of that $350 per day. When we talk about van transportation, it's a lot of people think like, oh, it's got to be so cheap to run a car, and it's not. Van transportation is extremely expensive. You pay by the hour with a minimum of 3.5 hours, plus you pay anything extra. So you're paying for your driver, you're paying for an aide, you're paying for your fuel. The cheapest way to get a kid to and from school is on the big yellow bus. And even on the late bus runs, if we have one bus that's only transporting 3 students in the Alling Street district of Griswold area, then it's still cheaper than getting those 3 kids on a van and having home stops for every single one of them. A place that we could potentially reduce costs, and we kind of looked at it last year, and then we kind of had to revert some of our changes, is tech school transportation. We could enforce the centralized stops. We saw when we did do a little pushback on that, we got a lot of feedback from parents of the tech's parents because it was a significant change. At the time we were doing home stops or stops close to the house. If we do a centralized stop, it's the parent and student's responsibility to get to that centralized stop. We're making one stop, and that's a way to reduce some of our cost. The other way we could reduce some of our costs is several districts in Connecticut, they only transport to one tech school. We have never done that. We have always been of the mind, if you want to go to Prince Tech or Vinyl Tech, we'll provide transportation. We don't have to do that if we don't want to. We could say E.C. Goodwin, that's closest in proximity, we will provide transportation to E.C. Goodwin and only E.C. Goodwin, and if your child wants to go to Prince Tech or Vinyl, you would be on your own for transportation to those. So those are other ways that we could save. It wouldn't be as significant as if we were to make some cuts to the Berlin side of the transportation, because it is a very small population of kids that utilize that service, but that is a way that we could reduce moving forward.
And that's something, if we're gonna look at the tech schools, it's something I hope we would phase in, so that a student is going there, we're not saying, oh, now there's not transportation next year, that we'd phase it in over 3 years, let the parents know that, in 3 years, we're not gonna, so as the student started, for saying Prince Tech, we're no longer service Prince Tech once the student graduates.
But we would, if you looked into that option, you would have time, because like you said, we're still under this current contract.
Yeah, I believe the contract expires, it's either, I think it's 27 is when it expires. We've got 2 years left on it. Which is crazy, because I swear we just signed that thing.
5 years instead of 3.
Yeah. So that's not necessarily an NBT contract thing. That's deciding which tech schools we provide transportation to would be a board decision. NBT is going to transport to wherever we tell them to. Yeah. So.
But it would have to be done a year in advance, so then the counselors placing the students at the high school would then be able to send them to what the options are, so it's not.
So right now they get picked up at their home and get.
No, so last year we tried to do one centralized stop, but we had a lot of pushback from the people that live in the outskirts, so on the Griswold or the Hubbards districts. So we have centralized locations now in each district. However, we can shave that number down if we say, nope, McGee or Willard or BHS, considering that is those are the centralized locations, school populations, then that's just a way, because we would reduce a bus essentially, or a tech run.
Julia, in any of your K board groups, meetings, has it ever come up about the fee structure and what they could possibly do differently?
No, other than districts are staying with them, continuing to pay. They have expenses that they have to pay. But it really that hasn't come up. But I will say a lot of the things I take advantage of don't cost the board money.
Mhm.
So
It's the membership,
It's
yeah.
right, but some of the webinars you've done, were they included because we're members, or did you pay?
I mean, I only get notice of them because we're members, so I don't
Right.
know how, if you
Yeah,
could just
so you
jump
don't,
on them
yeah,
anyway.
you just jump on them, and so I think there's a number of things that people do take advantage of. I don't know if that would even be a conversation Kay would be willing to entertain. I can bring it up. I know what has been brought up in the past is if a district has left and has been gone for a number of years and then they want to return, they'll drop it to 15,000 just the first year to get them back. But I think
Just
they
thinking of how many districts are struggling with budget, I just don't
Yeah.
know how they could possibly help with that in some way, and support that.
Anyone else want to add anything about CABE or transportation or anything?
Just to add for transportation, I live on Lower Lane, so we see the buses going every which direction, and there's a lot of buses with not a lot of people on them. So I definitely think it would be beneficial to,
Look into that.
yeah.
I think we're stuck for the 2 years.
Well,
but
yeah, I
we
mean,
redo that
after the 2
contract,
years.
You know, and I think it's just a matter of, I like the idea of getting a letter out to parents, and, you know, knowing the capacity of 77, we don't go anywhere near that on a bus.
Mhm.
So I think we should go 50.
Yeah, 50 to 55 is what we like to do, especially you get 77 high school students on a bus. They just don't fit. They just do not fit 3 to a seat. Most of them are over 6 feet tall. And it's, you could get, even getting 3 elementary students, fifth grade elementary students, 3 to a seat.
They don't enjoy it.
It's a lot. And then you have your book bags, your soccer bag, any other kind of accessories that you need. And typically we never schedule to capacity because people move in, and sometimes they have kids that need to go on a bus. And we need to have that flexibility where if a family of 5 moves in, we could get 3 additional kids on a bus. We have a Griswold route right now. They've got about 58 kids on this bus, and it's a lot. It's a lot for an elementary school, and we're starting to get some pushback on that. So we're adjusting. Maybe we could take some kids off of that route, throw a couple on a different one that services similar area. So it's logistics.
Brian, I know it's not today's problem. What does next year look like? What are our big concerns next year? Teacher raises, things of that nature.
Well, the raises are already set because we negotiated almost
Mhm.
everyone's contract.
So what's the percentage for next year?
The percentage is around 3% annually.
So
We'll be at the 4.2 overall with benefits like we've been each year. So anytime we're below, 3.2 even, there's still 1% just in salary, so you're looking at 500 and, a little over 500,000, that needs to be reduced. And then you reduce the other side. So we're very much back to a similar look of this every year. Which, if you look at the last years of what we've added, you added Millie's position, which is a career educator, which, we feel is doing a great job for students at the high school and offering that internship opportunities, and you saw about the career fair. We've added ESS at the middle school. We've added, this is years ago, probably 6 years ago, an additional counselor at the high school. We talked about that. Staff, we're really cutting teaching positions along the way because we're saying, what can we do with less? And the biggest issue is at the high school, do we have enough courses to offer for students? And that, when you limit the number of courses, there's less options for students too. They can't get the courses because you just don't have enough sections. If, certain content areas, and if we added more teachers, more students would take the classes too.
I agree. I want to say, especially in looking at the course registration, we just went through that in February. Looking at the classes and being able to take more options is much more appealing to students. I have an incoming sister in 8th grade, looking at all these courses, and she's like, "Wow, the high school has so much to offer," and she's excited to be there. So to keep enrollment up, along with just general student engagement in courses.
We want to, it's always been a priority to offer options and opportunities. That's been a big message. I think we want to continue that. I think at the elementary and middle school, you really want to keep the class sizes where people, 19 to 20 in the kindergarten classroom is a lot. And that's a large classroom.
Can I ask because this is the first year since we did the evaluations, we had that grace period year, right, because of the age change for starting kindergarten. So with the evaluations that we have, has that added to our number, lessen our number? How does that kind of reflect on the class sizes that we currently are going to have for the fall?
I think, and Lori can maybe speak to more because Lori's on top, she shares the numbers, but I think that the numbers are high right now based on the number of sections we have, if we have more students coming in. The one school area where they're not high is at Hubbard. They're 10 and 11 right now, I believe. But you can't, not gonna have 1 and 21. So the thought is, any choice students that we take in, we're supposed to declare what school they go to, whether it's Griswold, Willard, or Hubbard, and usually we divide them out. Things have changed with choice and how they like to do things very much in the last couple of years. So if Hubbard does have the low number of students, I would then contact Choice and say, we're gonna put those students, choice students, at Hubbard so that they're balanced across the size. I can't see Al's face behind me, but yes, so they're balanced. Yeah, okay.
It's no different than there.
All right, Al. I'm picturing your face right now, but we'll, and Al, no, Al won't have a problem. So we wouldn't have 20 at Griswold and 11 at Hubbard. We would then try to balance if they're choice students, which we can move.
Next year, we're gonna be in the same spot.
We're gonna be the same spot. Every year, it's every year, how do we do it? And we're running out of, you know, some options of what to do. And the biggest piece, and I go back to the retreat and so on, what my belief is, and hopefully yours is, right now, we have great retention rate of staff.
Yep.
We have the ability to attract high qualified individuals from other districts. We start cutting a lot of positions, people's willingness to leave other districts after 13 or 15 years to come to Berlin, they won't come because they're gonna be the lowest person on the totem pole. Why would I risk it? And that's a big deal. I mean, I don't think that, and I don't know how the community feels, I think many of you said when we have the excellent teachers or excellent administrator, it makes a big difference. So to not be able to attract, we know there's shortage areas and things, it becomes very difficult. If we lost some of our teachers that teach shortage area, you know, whether it's, I'm gonna say just certain areas, you know, even at the elementary, there's not a preponderance of candidates like there used to be, but you're talking math, your sciences, are very difficult to find certified teachers that are willing. And I know that some of you on the board actually experienced that with your children. So I think it's important that we're not like, you know, looking at the budget and not filling retirements and things is the right way to do it, rather than start eliminating people, if that makes sense.
And plus, there's the unknowns, like the IEPs that might be necessary, things of that nature. And I do want to share, I was talking to somebody who moved here a few years ago, and it was determined their child needed services, and everything he heard about that in his school system was like, gear up for the fight, gear up for the fight. He came in and he was like ready, and the school system said, what do you need? We got you. And he was like, what? And I think that's something that the school system should be proud of, and it's gonna be hard to sustain that type of promise to the community. So.
I think, you know, I did speak to Julia. I would love to have Evelisa Mayette, who's union president. She sits on the CEA Board of Directors for Hartford, to come maybe to a retreat and just speak to you what other districts are going through and where Berlin is in that spectrum. And the CEA attorney, you know, speaks to the new teachers every year, and he speaks about Berlin and how they're treated here and so on. I'm sure he'd be willing to come and speak to you. Now, they deal with multiple districts. They hear the issues that are going on, the things that you hear, you know. I think it's important for the board to get that perspective. I know that for the most part, we're not perfect, but I think the community for the most part is happy with what the schools are doing. And I think we want that to continue. And I think the decisions we're making today are gonna impact the district tomorrow. And that just as, you know, there's no, even with the Enhancement Act, hopefully, as Peter spoke of, will hopefully improve things. It's not gonna happen overnight that these colleges are gonna have more educators going into the field and so on. And then when there's a limited amount, where do these teachers wanna work? And we wanna be one of those districts where they wanna work, in my opinion.
I know.
I just want to say thank you. I mean, I know putting this together, Ashley, and for all the administrators is not an easy task. And I appreciate all the work that's gone into that.
And the committee too.
And
Anyone who hasn't shared anything or would like to share again, anyone want to share their thoughts, 2 cents, questions while this is our time?
The numbers for Willard Kindergarten are gonna be 19 and 20. And we're cutting teacher and some paras, I'm a little concerned.
What's that? Well, it's Griswold right now, it's not.
It's
Woodard.
Griswold, okay.
But it could be, I can't tell you that there won't be more coming into Wood, can't tell you. And at that point, we would look at to say, okay, you know, what are we gonna run in the negative, and hopefully sure up that we're not, I mean, that we're not gonna run, I could say this, I'm not looking to run K classes at 20. So if we have 20, then we're gonna have to look to find the money to have that teacher, and we're gonna run in the red somewhere. But what that means is, the following, you know, the following year's equipment budget or end of the year funds is not gonna be there. We may freeze supplies even further, you know, people have an expectation of class sizes and courses that are offered, and I don't think we wanna lose that. But the part before this, we did have an extra teacher in the budget for just that. So if we had our K numbers up, we would add a K teacher.
And now, is it 4th grade now? They're gonna need an additional teacher for 5th, right, over at Willard?
They're adjusting, so I don't know how the
Okay, so
looping's
like within
going,
the
how they're
building?
moving up, but they're moving a teacher to balance, and that's common practice.
Well, yeah, I
If the
figured.
bubble's there, they move with the bubble to try to do that. But it doesn't mean that, you know, you have 200 some apartments coming online. It doesn't mean you're not gonna have an influx of students, and that you're gonna get, you know, some of these grade levels that are gonna get large too.
What is the typical number for K that we like to keep it around?
16 or under. 14's ideal. And we don't have full-time duty paras in our K classrooms, you know, which are helpful. So if you did have to go to 20, then maybe we'd hire, when we have a larger class, hire a full-time duty para, which is less expensive than a teacher, but gives an extra set of hands, someone there consistently for the day.
Especially with, it seems like there's a lot of behavioral issues in the classes. So if we have 19 kids in a class in behavioral, we're definitely gonna need more support.
I don't disagree with you at all.
Concerning.
I don't disagree with you in a little bit. All I can assure you is that we will do our best to keep the class sizes where they need to be and get the support if needed. And then if we, like I said, it'll be budget freezes or run something in the red and hopefully be able to catch it up later on. You know, the priority is students first. And I think you can tell that with the budgetary cuts.
Yes.
Anyone else wanna share? Have any questions or comments? No? Okay, well, the referendum's tomorrow. Make sure you guys vote. Not telling you how to vote, but just go out and vote. Tell people to vote. All right, the superintendent's going to be proposing a revision of the adopted 26-27 school calendar, moving the April 19th professional development day to April 27th. The town referendum takes place on April 27th. This is for next year. Moving, no, 2 years out. 2 years out, yeah. Moving the professional development day will allow voting in the schools without students being there, and that's something we've talked about year over year. Do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, it just when we created the schedule, we didn't have it lined up with the referendum date we wanted to, so that's the only change that's really taken place, is that we're just moving that one date so that students aren't in school for the referendum. So that's the only change. And I know it was brought to the subcommittee for approval, and I don't think there was an issue there. So I think we're okay, as long as people don't have an issue here. It's 2 years out, so I don't think parents, unless are planning that far ahead, it won't impact them.
Do we have a motion for consideration?
I move to revise the adopted 26-27 school calendar, making April 19th a regular school day for students and staff, and April 27th a professional development day for staff.
So motion by Jen, second by Brian. Any discussion? All right, we can move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Vote carries 8-0. So moving on to our last thing before we adjourn. This is the first reading of the policy review and revision. So the ad hoc committee did meet on April 7th, which we didn't share out during committee, but we did meet to discuss these. Everything is posted in Schoology, but Shipman and Goodwin has recommended these new policies and revisions. So do you want to talk a little bit about them?
Sure. There's a little caption for each one here, and these things are really based on regulations or a state statute that we need to change. The first one is the School Security and Safety Administration Regulation Policy revised in light of Government Public Act 25-1 into law on March 3rd, addresses immigration enforcement. We've been briefed prior to new immigration regulations with ICE. We had Jessica Ritter here with Shipman reviewing how to handle both a local and a federal level if they should. We've appointed administrators at each building to be in charge and who to call and what to do. The difference between it at the state and the federal level is much different. If the federal level's here, typically there's a crime that was committed and so on. But I think the administration and myself feel very comfortable based on what we have in place, and we definitely align with what's being asked here. So the policy will reflect that. Any questions on the first one? The next one is also on Act 25-1, addresses immigration enforcement activity at schools. The policy is being revised for the clarity that the event that federal immigration is what I just spoke of, the federal immigration, what to do should they enter the school. The Shipman advised that the likelihood that this will take place is very limited, but should it, I think that we're in a good position to know what to do and to follow the correct protocols. Any questions on that? Bullying prevention intervention policy, safe school climate plan. This is just adjusting our safe school climate plans. We do have a policy on the safe school climate plans. It's being discontinued and replaced with the new Connecticut school climate policy, a state mandated policy. So what this does is we have to go back and look at our safe school climate plans and adjust them based on a new policy. This just makes sure that our policy adheres to the new requirements. We currently have the policy on the website, but what we need to do moving forward, we gotta decide how it's gonna be and where it's gonna be on each website. So each school is gonna have to have their safe school climate plan accessible on the website. So that's the policy here. This is a new one, including administrative regulation. Make significant changes to statutory provisions related to bullying. The new law directed CABE to develop and update and approve a Connecticut school climate policy, which in turn was adopted by the Social and Emotional Learning and School Climate Advisory Collaborative. The law further requires boards of education to adopt and implement Connecticut school climate plans by July 1st. So we have the policy, we're adopting it. CABE is involved in creating it. What happens many times is that the state legislature gets certain groups to produce documents or sample documents for them, and this is one that CABE's involved with. If you keep reading, Shipman's also been involved in this. Way we typically handle the policies is we go through Shipman. CABE also has policies. We typically do not use CABE's. The only time we've used CABE's is when you look at the policies and Shipman doesn't have it, we may take the CABE sample, edit it, and then send it to Shipman. Most districts use Shipman. Shipman, yes, we pay for the service. CABE's policies, they have an internal lawyer that writes their policies, but typically we send them to Shipman to be reviewed, edited, whatever needs to be, and they keep track of our policies. So Shipman looks at these policies here. This is a list that Shipman said based on our policies that need to be revised based on state, changes to the state statutes and so on. So the biggest thing is that the school climate improvement plan template and rubric, this is new that we have to go through and then adjust to make sure we're adhering to it. It's not that we didn't have climate plans before, it's just there's new requirements with it. Questions on this one?
Oh, and then what about policy 5132? Student dress, that's not on the.
Yeah.
It's not on the agenda.
It's not on the agenda?
No.
Oh, we went over that at our subcommittee. I don't know why it's not on there.
So we'll just have to do a first reading of that.
Well, I could do
at
first reading
another
next one. I don't know
time.
why it's not
Yeah.
on there. I'll have to ask Debbie, I'm sorry. But the next one is restorative practices, response policy. And this one here, we had discussion in the subcommittee that, you know, how far will the state push and mandate without funding? That was the big discussion. I can't tell you whether they will or not, will or won't. We do have restorative practices at all of our buildings, but, you know, the question was asked, is it gonna be like the reading program? The state's gonna say you have to use this restorative practice, and here's the training, and this is what you have to adopt. I can't tell you whether they will or won't at this point. Right now, it's not. They're required to adopt such policy, but it doesn't specify specifics, which is great if that stays that way, but I can't tell you if they'll change that.
Yeah, my biggest concern with that policy was if for restorative practices as they are, there's a whole program and training that goes with it that's over the course of many years, and it's very, very expensive. Torrington was one of the school districts in the state to model it, and they were grant funded, and they went through very, very extensive training. My biggest fear with this is that then the state is gonna come out and say, now you have to do what they did. It was a number of years ago, maybe 10 years ago or more, but it is expensive. It would change the whole discipline system of the whole entire school district. You'd basically can that, and then it would be very chaotic if the district wasn't going into it because we are choosing to adopt it. We would be forced to. It would be a mess. So, you know, though we have to adopt something, I think what we have is valid, but just keeping your eyes out on what's to come in the future now that we have it.
If you look at any of the handbooks, there is a continuum of consequences that are represented there for student discipline. And the state already does push at this by, you know, they do monitor the number of in-school suspensions, they monitor the number of out-school suspensions, they disaggregate that data looking at it by race, ethnicity, any of the subgroups that are there, they look at the whole piece, and then usually we get a report back from the state if we're high for student discipline in those areas. So there already are, you know, requiring that there is a continuum, and you look at those areas. So,
Any other questions or concerns about the policies? Comments, feedback? So at our next meeting, we'll have the second reading, and we'll adopt them, and then student dress will be on our next agenda.
Right. The last one was student dress, just to tell you before we go. Student dress here is really that we're not allowing backpacks to be carried at the high school anymore. We're requiring lockers to be used. So we just need to update the policy that doesn't state that backpacks, they could be used to bring the items into school, at the middle school and high school, but then they're left in their lockers during classes. And that's really a safety issue. So that's really what the last piece is just to update our policy. So.
Anything else? All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Melissa, second.
I'll second.
Second by Jen. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The vote carries 8-0. We're back.